like to introduce Sarah Dexter. This is her MFA presentation. And
yeah, sounds good. All right. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Sarah Dexter, and I'm going to be presenting my MFA thesis project entitled Hyperchromatic Interstitium. The core of my exploration for this collection was inspired by taking cloth out of its rectangular presentation, as well as give it dimension without using the body form, such as clothing. And to do that, I'm using fully fashioned knits, which we'll talk a little bit more about what that is, and developing support structures and designs that allow a material that is largely succumbs to gravity to give it form. There is an interest today in textiles, and the interest is growing in museums and galleries. There's a lot of reasons for this. Some are textiles, current associations with an outsourcing of labor, sustainability, feminism, and a reaction to the digital age. More often than not, textile representation in the arts settings is either in kind of this, rectangular presentation, or yes, on a mannequin. So my work, I wanted to break free from these two conventions. And the themes of my work that come through have to do a lot with reinvention. And so the ship of Theseus is a paradox that I think about a lot. And so a bit about what this is, some of you might know what it is, but imagine there is a ship, and the ship is made of wood, and the ship leaves port, and it's gonna go on a long journey, long journey, and on its journey it will stop in several ports. And on its long journey, it gets battered, it gets holes in it, in the hull, and so as they go to each port, a wood board is removed and a metal board is put in place. And every time it stops at a port, it's getting more and more damaged, more and more parts are getting replaced, until it ends up at its final destination, and all of the wood boards are gone, and they are now all metal. So the question being, did the ship of Theseus end up at its final destination? Is it a different ship as the ship that left? So I think about this with this paradox of constant change, and I'm interested in reinvention and aging and development. So some of the ways this comes through in my work is using materials outside of their usual function, combining materials to make new materials. I like a color spectrum, so kind of when one color becomes another color, there's thresholds between things, branching between spaces, layers, and transparencies. So a little bit about my original port. I start with my family. I am a middle child. This is me in the middle. I have my sister, who is the eldest. My brother is the oldest male. And then my younger brother is 16 months younger than me, so I was pretty much immediately not the youngest child. And so I assumed this role in the family of this sort of invisible observer. And so today I still kind of experience this feeling of loneliness or outsideriness. But the really nice part about that is I feel very free. I don't have as much oversight or expectations to be a certain way, which I really enjoy. So a part of my work is dealing with this tension between really wanting more connection and visibility, but still wanting to keep my freedom. In a way that some of these things are visually represented in my work are a lot of transparency. So this sort of invisibility, these invisible spaces, free bits, parts kind of reaching out, looking for new connections, and mobility. I grew up in Alaska. My parents moved for the Great Alaska Adventure where the house is never fully built. You know, it goes up just enough to live in, and then it's sort of a lifelong piecemeal patching, adding on, replacing environment. So this meant I was surrounded by a lot of making, a lot of labor, a lot of works in progress, and I became very uncomfortable with this unfinishedness. In my work, a lot of times I actually don't mind the unfinished or parts that are maybe you know, part of the process of making showing through. So it was a bit of a growing experience for me to create a full collection that is polished and clean and finished. But it was good for me to see something through to the finished part. And you'll see, I do also like building materials, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So Tyvek home wrap I used in this collection, as well as insulating foam. My family wouldn't probably describe themselves as creatives. They are certainly makers. My mom grew up in a Mennonite community on a farm, and she made food from scratch, mended things. My dad made all manner of things, so even beyond the house. So this is a paraglider harness that he made. It's just hanging in the middle of the main part of the house. So this is again a part of the environment I was in. I might walk out of my bedroom and have to like hop over a car engine, to get to breakfast. So I experienced this joy in the process of making and experimenting, and I've learned a bit about the courage to just kind of go for it and try. Now, I don't know if I'd have enough courage to build something to jump off the side of a mountain on, but it certainly is ambitious. So after I was reaching the threshold of youth to adulthood, I went to school at UAF and I got a degree in radiologic technology in 2005. And I extended my education to MRI technology. I worked at FMH as an MRI technologist for over a decade. And medical diagnosing is all about looking for answers. So, have a problem, tell me what the problem is, so I can fix this problem. And there's this sense that the answer can be found. So, working with these images, what it actually looks like to me is that there is so many more mysteries going on. That while medical imaging is really amazing and relatively minimally invasive, it still is a matter of interpretation, and there are a lot of barriers to seeing everything. So with all that we can know about the inner workings of the body, there's still more mystery. And I often turn to medical imaging as the sort of clawing for answers or the searching for inner worlds. And at times these medical interventions are also relating to the removal of parts or implanting of parts. Like your body is actually this ship that's sort of losing and gaining as it's going along. So like here, this is my neck in MRI, and this is a metal artifact. So in MRI, the way that it acquires images, it can't get a signal from metal, and so it'll create this sort of cloud, this like black cloud, this kind of amorphous space around it. So it's not even a real representation of what that metal actually looks like. So again, it's like, even though this is a very good technology, my spine doesn't actually, my spinal cord doesn't actually do that. It's this artifact that's happening from something else. And this will come through. This was a lithograph that incorporated some of this imaging, brain tissue and the blood flow in the brain. All right. So with a bit of good fortune and a lot of support from my spouse, I had the opportunity to reinvent myself. So I left MRI, moved to New York, and received a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Fashion Design at the Fashion Institute of Technology, where I specialized in knitwear. And knitwear is really unique in the fashion design world because the designer isn't just creating a wearable form and a wearable design, but the textile itself. So whereas working with a woven structure, a designer would already have a pre-existing fabric, and a knitwear designer will start with more of a raw product like the yarn. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of wovens versus knits, just because I realize that's not just maybe general knowledge. So a woven structure is a minimum of 2 yarns or threads that are interlaced at a 90-degree angle, and it creates a fabric that has a cross grain and a straight grain. And this makes the structure very sturdy and stable. Whereas a knit textile is using a minimum of 1 strand of yarn or thread, and it interloops around itself to make a structure. So one of the main structural differences with knits is that it allows that material to stretch. So you could have a woven made of one material, a knit made of the same material, and the knit material would stretch. So you can think of it like a metal wire. If you took a metal wire and pulled on it, it wouldn't have any give. But if you took a metal spring and pulled on it, it would have a lot of stretch. So the material's the same, but the structure is what gives it a different personality. So when it comes to presenting works as a woven or as a knit, wovens are going to hold their structure a bit more sturdily, and knits will kind of have their own relationship with gravity. And I really like this way that the knits interact with gravity, the way it kind of slumps a little bit more and is able to stretch and be, it's a little bit more pliable. The other advantage that I'm interested in is knits is the structure itself lends itself to a fully fashioned shape. So garments or other structures made of fabric are usually cut and sew or fully fashioned. So a woven fabric, for example, will be woven as a rectangle, and then the shapes of the pattern pieces will be cut out. And what that does is it leaves all of this extra material on the outside. That's essentially a waste product. Whereas fully fashioning, knits are able to just loop around itself. So you can knit this shape as it is, as you will need it, without any wasted product outside. So I like this minimally wasteful way of making clothing. That's one of the advantages. So I can make this work while taking advantage of this really valuable material that I really don't want to waste a lot of. All right, so after FIT, we moved back to Fairbanks. I started my own label where I was making small collections of one-off garments. I would take these collections out and show them, and then I would make them to order. So there's no wasteful inventory this way, and no outsourcing of labor. I had the opportunity to just show in Anchorage, Juneau, and Omaha. This is a Omaha fashion magazine that featured some of my garments with this dress and these pants. And so that was really great, but I found it a bit lonely. I was working in my studio largely alone and wasn't really finding opportunities locally to show or make those connections. So I was looking for that community. And my process is really more closely related to an art process in that more so than a fashion design production, because I was really just making one. And I wanted to work beyond the wearable ways of working with the material beyond the wearable. I wanted to create these dimensional forms out of textiles without the support of the human body. And so these were some of the ways at UAF that I was working with this issue. So making a knit form and stuffing it with polyfill, I found that it retained a bit of softness still, more of like a stuffed animal. It still needed an interior support structure, like this one needed a piece inside that would hold it up. So it was still very soft. And then working with wood to sort of exert tension on the piece and pull it out. And then this piece was really this transition between making functional clothing and making something that was a textile to display. So another material that I was experimenting with while at UAF is a material I'm calling cello Tyvek. So I take sheets of Tyvek home wrap, I paint them on both sides with acrylic paint, and then I layer them with cellophane. And what I was looking for was a material that wasn't fabric, that I could use clothing, pattern making, and construction techniques on. So this material is flexible enough to cut and sew together, and with the added benefit of if I apply heat to it, it shrinks, it hardens, and it becomes really, really strong and stable. It will support its own weight, and it's very lightweight. And what was really interesting with the effect is we get all this really great texture. And I like that the more that you destroy it, the more holes it would get, the more shrunken up and deformed it would get, the harder and harder that it would get. So I kind of like this metaphor of the scarring being associated with strength or rigidness. So I chose this as this counterpoint to the knits, which are soft, a little bit more joyful or maybe less confrontational, with this material that's very desiccated and it sort of looks like it's a shell that's been discarded. So a bit of my inspiration, some artists that are working that I reference their work and have led to some of the decisions that I've made. So Magdalena Abakanowicz is a Polish artist, and she was working with these large-scale textiles. So what's really fascinating about this is she was employing what they were calling free-form weaving. So this is a woven fabric, but it's a woven fabric that she's woven in this particular shape, much like you would do a fully fashioned shape. And that was very new at the time. And this, is a much harder way to work with this material. But it created these very organic shapes. She uses a lot of these branching veins, which I'm really interested in. You'll see it in my work. And so she really leans into this softness, these body forms, and is really changing up the structure of this material outside of this rectangular form. And textiles, particularly when she was making them, were really relegated as craft and sort of disregarded in this, so she's kind of challenging this hierarchy in the arts with the added association of textiles with being a women's domain, that she was sort of further marginalized as this female artist in craft. And I also have this tendency to want to work larger. So I love how large these pieces are. And I think that's as a reaction of feeling very small, like wanting to advocate for the worthiness of taking up space. And I looked at her too for some of these installation struggles. It's always a little bit, there's a lot of questions, you know, when you have a piece like this of it going into the space and how it's going to react to gravity. You have to spend a little bit more time with it. So it's coming up with these strategies for display, and then while really fully enjoying the properties that make fabric special. And she says, but woven material can move, it can react to people, and they react when they touch it. It has a life which no other material has. Yes. So Anne van Freyberg is an artist. She's born in the Netherlands. She lives in London. And she doesn't make textiles, but she makes what she calls textile paintings. So she takes inspiration from Rococo art. She distorts the image. She paints it on canvas, all these irregularly shaped canvas shapes, and then she appliques pre-existing fabric scraps on top. So the face is fabric, and then she adds all of these fringes onto it. So I really like the color use. I like this very vibrant color use. I like that she's broken free from this rectangular format that is in both textiles and painting. And I appreciate her cohesion in her work. I tend to find that to be a struggle. I like to kind of like follow all my wild hairs, and so artists like van Freyberg are good for me to look at to kind of keep tethered to really a central focus. Love the color choice. It's this sort of unabashed feminine exuberance. And I'm at the point in my life where I'm really not interested in downplaying the feminine in myself or the work to kind of prove that it's serious. And so I'm working with this place of joy, of femininity in my work. And Anne said something to the effect of it: embellishment has been associated with the feminine, frivolous and excessive, and was thus repressed within the rhetoric of modernism. Detailing and fabric were viewed as decorative fixtures. Zofia Crestes, so she doesn't usually work in textiles, but she has this process of creating sculptural forms out of foam. So much in the same way that I'm sculpting with foam, this is also what she's doing. She coats the outside of her sculptural forms with glass tiles, whereas I'm using a tailored textile on the exterior. And I really look to her work for that technique, as well as her curvilinear lines and her abstracted body forms as well. All right, the collection. So Spectral Fluff, this piece, was the first piece of the exhibition that I made. And it was the jumping off point for the rest of the collection. It is the first fully fashioned knit textile that I put over a rigid base. So it is a wall piece, it's on wood. It is the first time I did this in tarja, which we'll talk a little bit more about, with a loopy pile. And using this kind of spectral color and referencing a body part, and these repeated teardrop shapes. So we'll see that a lot in the rest of the work. So for this collection, I wanted to have it be rooted in images of the body. So both MRI images as well as illustrations. So this is in reference to both the aging and the changing body, and also this communication is looking for answers. Here's some specific examples. We'll see a little bit more. So the 2, 3, and 4 chamber views of this piece, brain MRI for safe behind your veneer, and an illustration for little diatribe. I observe the teardrop shape is being repeated in the body quite a lot, as well as branching vessels. These are some examples of parts of the body that I was drawing shapes from. For my color use, non-naturalistic color was very interesting to me. So for example, in medical illustrations, the color choice isn't naturalistic, right? Because the colors are being chosen and the diagram is to help inform and to help people understand the functioning of the body. So for example, blue denotes deoxygenated blood and red denotes oxygenated blood. So it helps you understand the system of the circulatory system, but it's not representational. They're not actually different colors, right? I didn't know this, but. So foam sculpting. So I arrived at foam. It's pretty lightweight. I had access to it. And it is sturdier than stuffing something with polyfill. So it would allow a structure underneath that would support the weight of the textile. And so I would take sheets of pink insulating foam. I would combine them together with spray foam to make larger blocks. I would use saws and knives to cut down its basic shape, and then use this heat wire to kind of get the finer details. I would sort of stop at that point. I didn't do any finer sanding or anything than that, since it would be covered with the textile. Okay, strap in. We're going to watch this. So knit intarsia with a loopy pile. So this is a technique that I use on many of the pieces. So what an intarsia is in the sense of knits is that on a single row, you are switching colors. And what this provides is a textile that is double-sided. You will have essentially a mirror image on the other side. And then the loopy pile, well, maybe I should talk about what pile is. So pile is a fabric that has protruding fingers on one side. So a terry cloth towel that has those little fuzzy nubs coming out, that's a pile fabric. The velvet has little fingers on one side, that's a pile fabric. So by putting these loops on one side of the fabric, that is a pile. And what this is doing is it's creating this texture just on one side of the fabric. This would be the technical back of the fabric, so this is the purl side of the fabric. With this technique, I can change the thickness as I want. So for instance, on comfort negotiation, there is some very concave sections, and I didn't want to have that thickness in those concave parts because it would fill it in, it would make it less pronounced. So I can do less of these loops, I could do no loops to kind of further change the dimension in the textile itself. I use a high quality merino wool yarn that I order in bulk. So I have to decide on a color story and a type of yarn that I want very early on. And then I have to commit to that yarn because I have to do a big order, and that's the yarn that I have for the whole project. So there's a bit of planning for this. I did have an opportunity to speed this up, but I thought it was important to see 2 rows as it is. And so this loopy pile I'm doing on every other row. You can kind of see there's two colors coming down, and that's because one color of yarn is the loops and the other one is making the fabric structure in the back. I have to get all that behind the little gate pin things. Now doing the next departure row. So that's going to create, continue on the structure of the fabric in the back, and it's encasing this pile. This is a silver reed knitting machine. Knitting loom. There are no electric components to it. I think sometimes when I say knitting machine, I think people hear electric, and it's not. All right, 2 rows, y'all. 2. Okay.
How many rows in a typical piece?
Hundreds. In just one panel. They're in multiple panels. So like 300 maybe. Yeah, I'm tired, you guys. Okay, so so this is that piece I was working on, this comfort negotiation. So this fully fashioning kind of shows what the shape looks like. So this is just one panel. This piece has 4 panels, 2 sides, front, back. So this is 3 of the panels put together, and they're hand stitched together. So this is just the side, the front, and the other side put together. So this piece right here is this right here. This is a little bit closer, so I have to number. I sort of, if you see this darker, this is kind of like a light purple, and this is a dark purple. This is where I decided that I wanted that pile to be thinner, because it's going to go right in that, you know, concave crook, so I wanted to keep that dimension. So I map it out, I decide on the colors. And as far as like the color decisions for this one, what I was doing was taking some of the darker colors like purple and putting them in like what would be at the more shadowy part, and the lighter colors and highlights. So I'm using this light and shadow or highlight and shadow that's used a lot in 2-dimensional work on something 3-dimensional, because I think it's a little bit absurd to like give something dimension with color that already has dimension. So it feels very indulgent. All right, so yep, this is comfort negotiation. So it's solid, it's sturdy, it's standing its ground in full color. This structure is keeping it very firm. And the title is in reference to this tension between being safe and being free. And I'll tell you what it's not important to me that this is what you see, but a leg was my initial inspiration for the shape and what I was drawing from. And it's because I associate the leg as a tool to make you mobile, right? It'll move you, it's a vehicle to move you from place to place. We'll dive trying. So this piece is also a foam, sculpted foam structure with this pile knit over top, along with these circular knit vessels that both connect them to each other and to the space around. So this is less about change in one individual and more about relationships. And so 2 growing individuals where there's need for this strong connection, but enough space and enough room and freedom to grow. So then then the title then is about this commitment to this dance, right? To figure it out, to make the adjustments, and knowing when to let some things go and when to reform new bonds. So this is like two ships of thesis is moving along together. Hang up all my fragile thoughts. So this was, I was referencing in regards to the color placement, the 2, 3, and 4 chamber views of the heart. So again, looking at these 2-dimensional images, but then putting them on something 3-dimensional, kind of like cubism, like you get multiple views at once. And this is the piece that I wanted to do, a dimensional piece, but that was only the textile. So there's no support structure inside. It is only the textile and gravity that's keeping it in that shape, kind of like a hammock. And so this really feels like a place to put something delicate. I've noticed there is an urge for people to look inside, which I think is really fascinating. There's this tension with gravity. It's suspended, you know, really kind of silently and softly away from the walls and the ceiling. Safe behind your veneer. So this was a combination of the Tyvek and knit structure on a wood base. So this is based on an axial view of the brain. And it is arranged and peeled out like a dissection, like a peeling back of the layers. It's the closest I've come to a self-portrait, I think. Whereas we kind of wear different personas, and I sort of feel like I wear a bit of a softer exterior, and I feel a little bit more tough and mangled on the inside. But I'm more becoming more comfortable at laying bare all the vulnerable parts. Membrane is the entrance to the exhibit, and it's this veil between the outside and the inside world. This piece itself represents sort of the early part of the journey, so sort of this white blank slate, and these, you're kind of this product of the world that you're brought into, and then as time goes on, you more and more choose the parts of yourself that you want to accept. And this colorful teardrop here, again, this teardrop shape, sort of represents this maybe outside your birth, your origin, is sort of those things that you pull up and you soak up onto yourself. Layer, so this is a hollow Tyvek sculpture. It gives this sense of maybe abandonment, decay, and destruction. So the title is in reference to sort of a safe space for the sinister, as well as a homophone for layering, being layered. So this is kind of part of the self laid bare without this kind of sweet, soft covering. Maybe a part of the self that's neglected or deemed unworthy. These are some smaller pieces, the cast stops. So I want to give the sense that there are multiples, that maybe there's varying stages of growth and decay, and maybe a mix of these old and new boards. And then the title is also a reference to the term for when you finish a knit, you cast off your knit. So I included an interactive piece because textiles really call out to be touched. I think they feel very accessible. We associate them with something that we are expected to touch. We have, we come in contact with textiles all the time. They're on our bodies constantly. We feel this closeness to them. And so I thought it was important to give people something that was safe to be curious with. And then the title, so this is also this pile in Tarja, and I left these letters without any of the pile on them, and then embroidered letters, so pet me and tell me I'm pretty, as this consent for touch for this piece. I performance piece. And an element of knits that I think is really important is this ability for it to be deknit and reknit almost infinitely. So this sort of life, death, life cycle. So I'm going to be performing this next week over an 8-hour time period. And during install, I did invite a group of kids in that were over there for spring break. They had a lot of questions. But one of the main ones, and I noticed this a lot, is this question of time. How much time did that one take? How much time did that? How much time did that one take? Which is really hard to answer, all of you know, like with your work, I'm sure, like, time kind of goes away when you're working anyway. Not that you're punching a clock every time you start something. So there's also this sense of like time, and it kind of highlights our culture's kind of consumption with this linear time and being related to labor and value. So the exhibition includes red, blue, and green lights to cast color shadows and to expand the installation works. So negative space and interaction with the environment was important to me. So these shadows are a great way for the space and the pieces to work together. This show title sign is an intarsia with a clear filament and white yarn. And it's hung, stretched out and away from the wall so that the color shadows are what's giving it depth. And I had a friend come visit me when I was setting up the lights, and I noticed that there were like the color shadows on her face. So I kind of like this room like involving everything. So the exhibition kind of starts out with this veil piece as the entry point. These more white and colorless pieces are kind of on the outside edge. While you turn the corner, then it's all of the full color pieces. And then you come around the corner, and then the interactive piece is there, just as a reminder to like, this is where you go to touch if you would like to. All right, so thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you all for being here, and for many of you have just been so involved in seeing along this work come to life, that it's really been there for me, and I really appreciate it. My committee, Wendy, Sasha, and Zoe, for your expertise and guidance, and my fellow students, my husband Kyle, for believing in me, and sacrificing so that I can grow. And with that, I will open the floor to questions.
So I was really interested, thank you, Sarah. I was really interested in this idea of things unfinished at this very beginning of your presentation. And I guess I've seen a number of your works over the years and always thought of some of them as deconstructed. But I guess in this new framing, do you see that, or do you see those pieces as deconstructed or as a symbol of unfinishedness?
I think it's the threshold in between where it could be either. Like a ship that's like both decaying and being rebuilt at the same time, or a house that's constantly like, one part might need to be new, but in a few years then it needs to be replaced again. It's kind of like this messy like in between.
And then you just very briefly touched on the idea of color within the exhibition space with the lights, but it seems to be such a prominent portion of the exhibition. I wonder if you could, or why was the choice to use that, and I guess I'm wondering why you chose not to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, I think time-wise. So yes, the color, to me was this, and even in the name, I guess maybe the name of the show I could talk about with that. So hyperchromatic is like, very brightly saturated color. It's about visibility. It's about the things that you can see. And then the interstitium is sort of this hidden organ. It's this kind of invisible space in between where all of this really important activities happen between body parts or between cells, which isn't really empty just because you can't see it. So it's sort of this highly visibly seen and this not seen. So I was looking for a way, since all of these works have a lot of negative space, was to kind of bring out this space in between, and have it be more than just like a shadow you might just understand, and like, oh, there's something different about this space now if it's in a different color. And it's like almost trying to be seen in the same way that the very vibrant colored pieces are. Matt?
So I really enjoyed your movie. I could have watched that like kind of thing for hours.
Oh.
It was very, very.
I'll teach you to knit. You can watch yourself do it for hours.
You know those like repeat loop movies of fireplaces with cat.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's just good.
Oh, I should do that. I should make one of those ASMR. And there's the sound too.
Yeah, but so clearly, I mean, those pieces have taken forever. You know, and some of them are installation pieces that
Yeah.
you can put up. So I'm curious, what do you plan to do with them after the show finishes? Given how much value of time that you've invested into them, how does one, you know, I use printmaking, and so like it's very easy for us to like put a whole bunch of prints into a drawer, and then they're archived. But what's your plan?
I mean, anybody want?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, they're gonna, you know, go back to my studio until they have a home, but I don't have a lot of room for them, so that's a good question. One thing at a time. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear it.
Just curious.
Right.
Why is abstraction and stylization of the body important?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the known versus the unknown, or like our perception of what's true. So like, for instance, imaging of the body, or you know, we expect these images to be true. We expect them to tell us something that's accurate. And so we might know what a body part looks like, but then to abstract it is like, maybe it's more than what it is. Or maybe it's, you know, maybe a different way of looking at it.
Tell us a little bit about option relationships within the show. You thought about that being a part of the title and how it might be perceived at times.
Object related in the gallery. Yeah, so, yes. So, for instance, a little bit hard to see, but, so the two pieces here, it's kind of behind this piece, but this hammock piece, I intentionally put it kind of right next to, this layer piece that's only the cellotype, kind of next to the one that's only the fabric, to kind of like, maybe think about, was that in it at one point? Like, were they separated somehow? And then as far as, so this piece was actually on the other wall first. So I installed it on this wall first. So some of it is just how the space feels. So when it was behind this, on this wall, it was too much. It was like, was kind of felt visually awkward. And moving it to the other side made the room feel more balanced. So it's sometimes a mix between like what will work with the space and like what makes sense with the pieces. Yeah. And I have to consider too the parts of the ceiling that can't take weight. Yeah.
How did you notice your thesis changing as you worked through this exhibition?
Yeah, it's really hard. I feel like it's hard because I like to go off. I feel like I'll feel something that's connected, and then but it doesn't visually connect. So I have to so there's a lot of projects that I was working on that had to be cut, right? So there's that change, and then the things that are installation, you don't even really know what they're going to look like till they're in the space and up as well. So that was really fun for me, and thankfully I had spring break to, you know, sit with it. So some of these associations changed for me just in my experience of it as it was going up in the space and I could see it fully out there. Yeah, it is hard because when it's like, it has to be cohesive, it has to make sense together, and then when to like cut some of those ideas off is really hard.
You've got this one up right now, and with the leg piece there, and I'm just curious about the thought process and that went into like the decisions on the base, because I know we had that like big discussion with Iris about like,
How
and it
strong
just went on and on. I wondered whether that was a simple choice and what some of the thought.
Yeah, so originally I made this piece and this was on the ground and I wanted it to be up higher, so I wanted to have a base for it. And I knew that I didn't want it to be more knit. I think Wendy kind of suggested maybe concrete or something that was a totally different material, right? And so I like this, it was in my head a lot of like how to integrate the pieces into this space. So it almost looks like, since it's concrete and it's really the same concrete as the floor, it's like an extension of the floor then. Yeah. Hi.
I love how you're tackling all these like messy in between existential questions about identity and change. And you know, I've gathered through your presentation and some of the answers to the questions from the QA that maybe the answers that we're wanting aren't always like neatly there for us. I just have to ask you if you have any profound insights to share about identity.
Nope. It's all a mess. It's all a mess. It's just changing all the time. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's just going to change forever, and that's the point. The end isn't there. Mia?
Yeah, what's the difference between exhibition and collection? All about the word collection. Is that like music people with albums?
Yeah.
Or is already you have something in mind first and create it, or it's something you curate or even talk about the word?
Yeah, that's a term pulled out from fashion. Create fashion collections. So I think I still think of like designing a group of works that go together as a collection, and I guess in my mind I'm still using that term. So I don't know. What would be the art term? Is there an art term for a collection? Body of work. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I hadn't actually thought about that. Bella.
Really great presentation, thank you. I'm curious about why gravity is so important. It definitely seems to be important, and you mentioned it several times.
It interacts with the material a lot. So just with the material itself, gravity, I feel like if I want the fabric to do more than be a pile on the ground, I have to combat that gravity that's exerted on it. But then it also creates, kind of combating this gravity, it gives you this point of tension, which I think then relates back to this uncomfortable in between of like pulling with gravity. And fabric will naturally pull down to the ground, right? So you can kind of use that quality to extract an effect out of it. Oh, sorry.
I think the lighting really changed the feel of the space and complemented the work really well. How did you choose the lighting?
Yeah, so the blue, green, and red creates this like CMYK effect on the wall. And the struggle that I had with these lights is, again, until you have the space, you don't really know exactly what, how, I didn't know how much light it was gonna mix to create white light on the piece, but will it be enough white light? And so it was a struggle of, I would have loved to have it all be just the red and the white and the blue lights. It just wasn't enough light. So there are some pieces that have an additional white light that are on it, and it made those color shadows less, or added the gray shadow. But I felt like sometimes there wasn't any like getting around that if it was going to be well lit enough. Yeah. Really?
Yeah, I was really interested in something you said during your presentation, that you make these
Yeah, I don't ever feel like enough. That's what my art therapist would say. I don't ever feel like enough. So yeah, it's a, yeah. That's probably it.
I have sort of a related comment. So I really love the aesthetic qualities in it. I think it's very visually distracting and engaging, like all the stuff you're talking about, a lot of textures and things that come to the surface that it wants to do. And sometimes I wonder, as I'm experiencing it, is it relying so much on aesthetics that I'm not digging deeper and looking at what else is there, like what's behind it? And it almost feels like I can't see it, you know what I mean? And so I'm kind of wondering if you feel like that is a part of the concept of that, like, really strong emphasis on aesthetic appeal, and you mentioned, like, in the paper, like, people want to touch it, or like, you want to create a desire to touch it, and then you give them that opportunity. Do you feel like you're using that as sort of like this thing to give it value and distraction or maybe obscuring something?
Yeah, I think so. I think a part of it is persona and like this sort of distracting, like this power of being able to maybe choose what people see, and yeah, like distract with this thing over here. And it would take time, right, to sit longer before that distraction settles down. And it might always be a surface thing. This is protection.
I guess sort of it's also my thoughts about color was what I think when I asked the question, but in the illustration portion, you mentioned like the colors were selected to illustrate an idea or to teach something. And I feel like you did that maybe in one piece you mentioned, but the other ones, it feels like colors being used for so it kind of is a little bit obfuscating for me to understand it as one metaphor. It feels a little bit.
No, it has been cold even for us,
Do you
but
feel
this
like
time of the year, we're getting so much sun during the day.
Yeah, each piece I was kind of thinking about how that piece, I saw it with the colors, and it was, you know, the vessel piece there was really the most literal, it's not naturalistic use, but it is an accurate description of how a medical illustration would be, in as far as like the two different colored blood vessels with like the purple kind of in the middle. Yeah, so I think it just depended on the piece. Yeah.
A lot of your works connect to your childhood and your experiences, and they mean a lot to you and like how you are. And with vulnerable pieces like these, it allows other people to connect very deeply with them as well, even if it's in a different way, like personal to them. Did you expect or like intend for other people to like deeply connect to these pieces, even though they're more representative of yourself?
Yeah, and I like that, and I feel like I actually don't feel powerful enough to make something universal or make something like that everyone would see it in the same way, and I don't really want that responsibility anyway. So like I was saying about the leg, like I was using the leg, but I don't need anybody to see it as a leg, or like, you know, it gets to be something different for everybody, and I like that. I want that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about shadows a little bit more? It seems to be a very important part of their work.
Yeah, I've with these pieces and all the negative space that I was envisioning, right, of how they would expand out, and that the light and the different colored shadows would allow more of this invisible space to kind of come to life. So like how do you activate something you can't see? So I think it was this attempt, was it successful or not? I don't know. But to kind of attempt to expand the form out into this invisible space to kind bring it into the room.
Talk about the interior versus exterior space. You talked about early on in the talk about how you're removing the body as a prop, but then you're sort of putting it back in an abstracted way. And you have the one that's referencing a heart that doesn't have that, and you're surprised that people looked inside. Some of these are about interiors and some of them are exteriors.
Yeah, so layers, right? And so like the complexity of the self, and maybe the parts that you show or the parts that you hide, or, you know, and are you hiding them because they're, you know, you need to protect them, they're precious, or are you hiding them because they wouldn't be accepted? So yeah, depending on the piece, it would be maybe a relationship with that layering. So like the leg could have that, you know, cellotypic thing underneath. It kind of makes you think about, is it underneath? You know, that's why I thought it was important to have the brain piece that has the part peeling away. Yes, how those parts of the self interact. When
You worked with MRIs for 10 years, right? So to me, there's a lot of metaphors in there and relationships to that experience of having these disconnected people's parts and lives involved in yours. And, do you see that in the work?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, you interact with a person and you have this, you know, short relationship with them. You know, your MRIs, I don't know if anyone's ever had an MRI, people hate them. Like MRI technologists, most of your job is just getting people through the tests, right? So you have, but then what you get are these two-dimensional images of the inside of them in a very particular area, right? So it's, this person comes in and I get to experience a part of their body, very specific part of their body, in a totally different way. And then you go in and get them up and they're just like another person again. So this interior worlds in combination with people's experience with them, which is really hard.
Yeah, this seems like a good, I was trying to put myself in a position of looking at these images and noticing things and how that's kind of related to your own experience and how the whole show kind of reads like that.
Yeah. So then it's hard to like, how do I talk about this experience of this whole other career that I have? So it also represents a reinvention in me. Like this was my career. You know, this was something that I was doing for really, it was part 40, 50 hours a week that I was doing, you know? And so then what does it mean now to not be doing that and to be doing this other thing?
One quick at a time. Watching your work progress over the years in the community has been so rewarding to see it. I remember in the Bear Gallery seeing the works just like literally coming off the wall and really starting to assert themselves and take up space and just have them. And I was just really looking forward to this. What are you going to do with this whole space? It's all yours. Was there anything in this process now what's inspired you? Like, okay, this is what I want to do next, whether it's having somebody go into your artwork or touch it,
Right.
things like that. Is what's next, I guess.
Oh my gosh, I think, yeah, well, I think a breath is gonna happen first, and then there was, I mean, and like I said, I have a really hard time like keeping to kind of one central focus, so there's been a lot of backburnered things, like there's been a lot of things that are just like, that's for later, so I think just going back into that pile and kind of like seeing the next thing that's like, ooh, like, but definitely like the install process, a whole new level of interest. A lot of things were the first time I ever tried something, so like the little projected arms there going directly in the wall, I wasn't sure that was gonna work, but it worked really well, and now I'm just like, how else can I do this? So yeah. Okay, I think we're like out of time. We gotta go to the gallery, but anyone last question? Are we good? Thank you, everyone.